Holden took her gently by the elbow, and she followed him out of the dining room back into the study where her bag still sat next to a chair. His brow was furrowed over his eyes, as though he was deep in thought, and it wasn't until he'd stood there for a moment on the large rug in the middle of the room that he turned to look at her again. "If you really want to make it up to me, then let me do a reading on you." Blinking up at him, Leah tried to wrap her mind around what he was saying. "Are you telling me you're a psychic?" Her mind raced. Was this some sort of dirty trick? Did he think she was a fraud and he was trying to expose her? She'd heard of those sorts of things before. "Not at all," he assured her. Holden took her hand in his, looking down at their fingers, and then took her other hand as well. They stood face to face, and when he raised his head to stare into her eyes, the room around them melted away. "I just think I know some things that might help you." She had come this far, and there was no point in giving up now. Leah swallowed nervously. "Okay." Her palms tingled with energy, and she felt that if she looked down, she would see blue fire crackling between them. This man was something else, but she didn't know what yet. "You feel like the universe is trying to tell you something, but you aren't sure if you're hearing it correctly. You know there's got to be some sort of connection between us if we keep running into each other like this, but it's just so strange that you don't quite know how to handle it." His voice was gentle and smooth, the whisper of a breeze through the trees in a forest. His hands were strong enough that he could have crushed her fingers inside his own, and yet he held them like delicate flowers. "How did you know all of that?" She breathed, feeling their bodies grow slowly together. It might only have been a millimeter, but it felt like a light year. "Because I've been feeling the exact same way. When I saw you at the parlor, it was like something clicked inside me. I was drawn to you, but it didn't make sense because I had no idea who you were. I wanted to absolutely pulverize that guy who tried to hurt you, and I probably would have if I'd let my instincts take over." Leah could understand. She would have thrown herself at him and let him do whatever he wanted, but she had gotten into her own head and convinced herself that none of it mattered. "Then I ran into you at the grocery store," Holden continued, "and I thought it was sheer chance. But you're here now, and I don't want to see you leave." He leaned forward and pressed his forehead against hers, closing his eyes. "I need you, Leah, in a way I can't explain." Her heart throbbed, pumping blood throughout her body, but not putting out the fire that Holden had lit inside it. Leah's lips worked of their own avail, tipping up so that they touched his. It was slow at first, tentative and sensual as they explored each other. He smelled of cologne, seasonings, and fire, and she hardly wanted to exhale again because she only wanted to breathe him in. Holden's lips convinced her to open up to him, to let their tongues get to know each other, to solidify the fact that this wasn't just a mistake. His fingers moved from her hands to her hips, twining around her waist and pulling her close so that their bodies were pressed together. Leah could feel the hard muscles underneath his shirt, and she knew the urgency from his mouth was a reflection of her own. With her hands freed, she let them slowly travel up his arms to his firm shoulders before they curled in the ringlets of his hair. Her thumb measured the hard angle of his jaw and the stubble that clung there, and the unrelenting urge to be close to him had completely taken over her. Leah needed him, wanted him, had to have him. He had claimed to have no psychic powers, but he might as well have. He tipped his head back and broke their kiss. Holden looked into her eyes, his hands still wrapped around her waist. "Say you'll stay with me tonight," he whispered, his lips only a fraction of an inch away from hers. "Let's see what fate is really trying to tell us."